My name is Hannah Scott, and if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's that money can bring out the ugliest side of people, especially family. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My parents weren't rich, but they worked hard to give me and my older brother Michael a good life. We weren't spoiled, but we never went without. My dad used to say, "Family is worth more than money, Hannah. Remember that." For a long time I believed him. I thought Michael believed it too. He was charming, ambitious, and always talked about how one day he'd make it big and take care of us all. I admired him. I trusted him. But as we got older, I started noticing cracks in his perfect image. Michael loved money, too much. While I worked part-time jobs through college and budgeted every penny, Michael was always chasing shortcuts. Get-rich-quick schemes, shady investments, even borrowing from friends he never paid back. He always had excuses, always had a story. When my parents passed away within a year of each other, I was devastated. Losing them felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath me. But on top of that grief came a new storm, their will. Our parents had left behind the family home, some savings, and my father's small business. It wasn't a fortune, but it was their life's work. Their will clearly stated everything should be split equally between Michael and me. First I thought it was fair. I didn't want more than my share. But Michael wanted it all. He started with sweet talk, saying things like, "Hannah, you don't really need the house. You're young, you can start fresh anywhere. I'll take care of it for you." Then he tried guilt trips. "Dad always wanted me to run the business. You know he trusted me more with money than you." And when those didn't work, he turned nasty. He accused me of being selfish, of not respecting his hard work, and even spread lies to relatives that I was trying to cheat him. But the truth was simple. I wasn't the greedy one. He was. For months the tension grew. Michael moved into the family home without asking me, started taking money out of our parents' accounts, and even tried to transfer the business under his name alone. He underestimated me, though. He thought I'd stay quiet, that I was too soft to fight back. He was wrong. I may not have been as loud as Michael, but I was smarter. While he schemed in the open, I stayed patient, gathering every piece of evidence. Bank statements, emails, signed documents, witnesses who saw what he was doing. I wasn't just going to fight him. I was going to destroy him legally and publicly. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about justice. This was about making my brother realize he couldn't bully me, couldn't manipulate me, and couldn't steal what didn't belong to him. And when the time was right, I made my move. Michael thought he was clever. He strutted around the family home like a king, throwing little digs at me whenever we crossed paths. "You know, Hannah, Dad always wanted me to be the head of this family," he'd say with that smug grin of his. Kept quiet. On the outside, I acted like the naive little sister who didn't know any better. But on the inside, I was building my case like a soldier preparing for war. First, I went through the bank accounts. My parents had left us joint access, and I noticed multiple unexplained withdrawals. I printed every single one, highlighting the dates and amounts. Then, I requested old emails from the lawyer who had drafted the will. Sure enough, there were copies of conversations where my parents clearly stated their wish. Everything split 50-50ths. Next, I spoke to the accountant who handled Dad's business. He told me Michael had tried to strong-arm him into changing the records, but the accountant had refused. That testimony alone was gold. Piece by piece, I built a mountain of evidence. And Michael had no idea. The final straw came when he called me one evening, pretending to make peace. "Look, Hannah," he said in that fake sweet tone of his, "I don't want us to fight. Just sign over your half of the house and the business to me, and I'll let you keep the savings. You can start fresh somewhere else. Isn't that fair?" I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. Fair. He thought offering me scraps while he took everything was fair. That night, I called my parents' lawyer, Mr. Thompson, and laid everything out. When I showed him the documents, his eyes widened. "Hannah, this is more than enough. If you want, we can take him to court. You'll win." But I didn't just want to win in court. I wanted Michael to feel the weight of his greed. I wanted him exposed. So instead of rushing into a lawsuit, I waited. I let Michael dig his own grave deeper. He moved more money around. He bragged to relatives about becoming the sole heir. And he even threw a party in his house, acting like he was already the rightful owner. That's when I struck. At the family gathering, surrounded by uncles, aunts, and cousins, Michael was boasting about how he was taking care of everything after our parents' passing. I stood up, holding a neat folder in my hands. Actually, Michael, I said calmly, you haven't been taking care of things. You've been stealing them. The room went silent. Every eye turned toward me. Michael's face drained of color. I opened the folder and laid out the evidence on the table. Bank statements, emails, witness testimonies. Gasps filled the room as relatives leaned in to read. Michael stammered. Teach, this is out of context, she's lying. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the final piece. A notarized letter from the accountant confirming Michael had tried to manipulate him. By the time I finished, Michael's reputation was in shreds. My relatives glared at him with disgust. And for the first time in his life, my brother had nothing to say. But that was just the beginning of my revenge. Michael didn't crumble right away. That would have been too easy. Instead, he tried to spin the story in his favor. You all don't understand, he shouted at our relatives, his voice cracking. I was only protecting the estate. Hannah doesn't know how to manage money. Dad always said I was better with finances. But nobody was buying it. The evidence was too strong. Even Aunt Linda, who had always spoiled Michael, shook her head in disappointment. I stayed calm. I didn't need to raise my voice. The truth was loud enough. Later that night, Michael cornered me in the kitchen. His smugness was gone, replaced with desperation. Why are you doing this, Hannah? Or family? Families don't drag each other through the mud. I looked him straight in the eyes. You stopped being family the moment you tried to steal from me. From us. You chose greed, Michael. He tried to grab the folder of documents from me, but I pulled it back. Don't even think about it. Copies are already with the lawyer. His jaw clenched. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The next morning, I officially filed the case with Mr. Thompson. When Michael was served the legal papers, his bravado completely cracked. He had to hire an expensive lawyer, but even then, the odds weren't in his favor. Court was brutal. Michael sat there, sweating, while my lawyer laid out the evidence piece by piece. The bank withdrawals, the false claims, the attempted intimidation of the accountant, it all painted a clear picture. Michael wasn't just greedy. He was manipulative and deceitful. The judge looked unimpressed with him from the start. Michael tried to argue that he was only safeguarding the assets, but under cross-examination he slipped. He admitted to moving money without telling me. That was all it took. The court ruled in my favor. I got back my rightful 50% share of the inheritance, both the house and the business. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was watching Michael lose. His reputation in the community was destroyed. Friends distanced themselves. Relatives whispered about his greed. He was forced to sell his car to pay his lawyer. And the business that my father had built, the one he tried to control, was now half mine. But revenge isn't just about money. It's about making someone feel the consequences of their betrayal. So I did something unexpected. I offered Michael a deal. You can still work at the business, I told him. But under me. You'll have to answer to me for every single decision. No lies, no games. If you can't handle that, you walk away with nothing. The look on his face was priceless. The same brother who once strutted around like he owned everything now had to choose between swallowing his pride or losing everything. He chose to stay. And now, every morning, Michael walks into the office and reports to me. His little sister, the one he thought he could cheat out of her future. My parents had always told me to stand up for myself. This was me doing exactly that. Michael thought greed would make him powerful. But in the end, it only chained him to the one person he underestimated the most, me. And trust me, watching him live with that humiliation every single day. That's the sweetest revenge I could have asked for. At first, Michael tried to act like nothing had changed. He walked into the office in his fancy suits, throwing around orders like he was still in charge. But the employees weren't fooled anymore. They had seen the court ruling. They had heard the whispers. Everyone knew the truth. Michael was no longer the boss. It was the first time he tried to override one of my decisions. I calmly stopped him in front of the whole staff. "Michael," I said firmly, "you don't make final calls anymore. Everything goes through me." The silence in the room was deafening. Employees exchanged glances, some even smirking. For the first time in his life, Michael had to sit down and listen instead of command. And oh, did it burn him. He'd slam doors, mumble insults under his breath, and try to undermine me in subtle ways. But every time I caught him, every time I made sure he was reminded that his power was gone. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to punish him harshly. The humiliation of answering to me, his younger sister, was punishment enough. But karma wasn't finished with Michael yet. One afternoon I got a call from the bank. They flagged suspicious activity on Michael's personal account. Apparently, he had been gambling heavily online, trying to make quick money after losing control of our inheritance. It all clicked. His desperation, his mood swings, the constant borrowing from friends. Michael wasn't just greedy. He was reckless. When word spread in the office, his remaining respect vanished. Employees whispered about his gambling problem, his poor choices, his downfall. I didn't have to ruin him. He was doing it all by himself. Still, part of me remembered the little girl who once looked up to her big brother, the one who thought he would always protect me. That memory hurt, but I couldn't let it weaken me. Michael had chosen his path, and I chose mine. I expanded the business, introduced new strategies, and brought in loyal employees who respected hard work, not manipulation. Slowly, the business thrived again. And with every success, Michael sank further into the shadow of what he could have been, if only he hadn't been consumed by greed. The final blow came during a company meeting. Investors praised me for turning things around. One of them looked at Michael and said, "It's a shame you weren't capable of running things as well as your sister. She's the true leader here." I'll never forget the look on his face, red with shame, lips trembling, eyes darting to the floor. That's when I realized something important. Revenge isn't always about destroying someone completely. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is forcing them to live in the ruins of their own choices. Michael still comes to work. He still answers to me. And every single day, he's reminded of the truth. He tried to steal my future. But in the end I stole his power. And I'll never let him forget it. The more I grew, the smaller Michael became. It wasn't just in the office, it was everywhere. At family gatherings, relatives no longer asked Michael about his big plans, or praised him for being the golden child. Instead, they came to me for advice, business guidance, even personal support. I had become the reliable one, the one carrying on our parents' legacy with dignity. Michael, on the other hand, sat in corners, sipping his drink quietly while avoiding everyone's eyes. His once booming voice was reduced to mumbled excuses. One night, after a long meeting, I walked into Dad's old office. The desk still smelled faintly of his cologne, and his photo sat proudly on the shelf. For a moment, I imagined him watching everything unfold, nodding at me with pride. I whispered, "Don't worry, Dad. I made things right." He didn't win. But Michael didn't give up entirely. Greed doesn't die easily, it just changes form. A few months later, I discovered he was trying to start his own side business, secretly meeting with a few of our company's old clients, promising them better deals. He thought he could rebuild his empire behind my back. This time, I didn't wait for him to sabotage me. I collected proof, emails, text messages, even recordings of him pitching his shady offers. Then, during a board meeting, I presented everything in front of the investors and partners. Michael froze. His face drained of color as the evidence flashed on the projector screen. One investor stood up furious. "After everything, you still tried to cheat your own family." That was the breaking point. The board voted unanimously to strip Michael of all involvement in the company. Effective immediately, he was out. He stormed out of the room that day, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. That was the last time he ever stepped foot in the business my father built. I thought I would feel satisfied watching him walk away, but instead I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't have to fight. The war was over. Michael disappeared from the public eye after that. Word spread about his failed schemes, his gambling debts, his downfall. People who once admired him now used his name as a cautionary tale. As for me, I rebuilt everything stronger than before. I modernized the business, created new opportunities, and turned it into something my parents would be proud of. But here's the real revenge. Michael has to live with himself. Every time he looks in the mirror, he sees the man who had everything handed to him, and lost it all because of his greed. I didn't just take back what was mine. I forced him to face the truth he can't escape. And that truth is harsher than any punishment a court or a family could give him. He destroyed himself. And all I had to do was stand strong and let him fall. After Michael was removed from the business, life felt different. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the constant weight of betrayal. The office was lighter, more productive, and full of people who actually respected leadership. I poured my energy into rebuilding. I introduced employee wellness programs, modernized operations, and even expanded into new markets. Within 2 years, our company profits nearly doubled. And every step of the way I thought of my parents. They had built the foundation, and I was finally honoring their legacy the way it was meant to be. But Michael's shadow still lingered. Every now and then I'd hear whispers about him. How he was bouncing between odd jobs, struggling to pay off his debts, or moving from one rental to another because he couldn't hold on to anything stable. He wasn't just broke financially. He was broken emotionally. First I felt pity. After all, he was still my brother. But then I remembered the way he had looked me in the eye and tried to cheat me out of my future. The way he lied, manipulated, and nearly destroyed everything my parents worked for. Pity turned into resolve. I wasn't going to rescue him. That was his punishment, to live in the ruins of his own choices. Then came the day of ultimate closure. Our family held a reunion at the old house. My house now. Everyone gathered in the backyard, sharing food, laughter, and stories. For the first time in years, there was peace. And then, like a ghost, Michael showed up. He looked older, worn down, with sunken eyes and messy clothes. The confident man who once strutted around like a king was gone. He barely spoke during the gathering, keeping to himself. But as the evening ended, he approached me quietly. "Hannah," he muttered, his voice low, "I messed up. I ruined everything. I just wanted more and I lost it all. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm sorry." For a moment I just stared at him. Part of me wanted to scream, to remind him of all the nights I cried, all the times I doubted myself because of him. But instead I simply said, "Sorry doesn't undo what you did, Michael. But living with the consequences, that's your burden. I hope one day you learn from it." He nodded, eyes glossy, and walked away into the night. And just like that, I realized something important. Revenge isn't just about destroying someone. It's about reclaiming your power, your voice, your life. Michael thought greed would make him unstoppable. But in the end, it chained him to a life of regret. And me. I rose from the ashes he tried to bury me in. Stronger. Martyr. Unbreakable. My parents' legacy was safe, my future was mine, and Michael, well, he became nothing more than a cautionary tale. And that, to me, was the ultimate revenge. Life after Michael's downfall was quieter, but in the best possible way. 4 years I had lived under his shadow, questioning my worth, doubting my strength, and wondering if I would ever be able to stand on my own. But now I didn't just stand, thrive. The business flourished under my leadership. Employees who once feared Michael now felt safe, motivated, and proud to be part of something bigger. Investors trusted me. Our family name regained the respect it deserved. And me. I finally had peace. But more than that, I had grown. Revenge hadn't just given me back my inheritance. It had given me back myself. I learned that silence doesn't mean weakness. And patience doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is letting someone expose themselves, while you quietly prepare to rise higher. As for Michael, I rarely heard about him anymore. A rumor here, a whisper there. He was drifting, surviving but never thriving. He had become a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. And that's when it truly hit me. I didn't need to keep fighting him. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Because I had already won. Not just in court, not just in business, but in life. I had taken the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, and turned it into strength, growth, and victory. So, to anyone listening to my story, I want you to remember this. No matter who tries to bring you down, no matter how powerful they seem, truth, patience, and resilience will always expose them in the end. Greed destroys itself. But courage builds empires. And that's exactly what I did. So that's how my greedy brother tried to take everything from me. But in the end, he lost it all, while I rose stronger than ever. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life revenge tales like mine, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. And remember, the best revenge is living well.